are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support the show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
It is Friday, February 14th, 2020. My name is Sam Steeder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. It's Casual Friday, folks. I am wearing a soft-collared shirt, as is my tradition on Casual Friday. It's also Valentine's Day, so that's super exciting. In studio, joining us, TYT correspondent Emma Vigeland.
Hey, yay. Happy V-Day.
Exactly. This is how she always wants to spend all of her Valentine's Days. And also joining us from his studio in a few minutes will be Ben Dixon from the Benjamin Dixon Show.
He's having a real moment.
He's having a moment. The Bloomberg bomber, as we call him.
Performing a public service.
Indeed.
Help us, Ben Dixon.
Ben Dixon, the savior of American democracy, perhaps.
Also on the program today, Bill Barr's production of Trump and I Are Not Co-Conspirators flops at the box office. Meanwhile, it's Bloomberg's time in the barrel, but he's making a $500 million bet that it won't make a difference. Bernie Sanders now number one in the latest Texas poll. And Jim Jordan begged victims of sexual abuse not to tell anyone he knew. Bill Barr's DOJ targets intel agencies for Russia info. And we are now temporarily inside the window in which Scalia's death precluded an appointment to the Supreme Court. And Mitch McConnell wants you to know he changed his mind about that, at least going forward. The culinary, I've gotten a lot of grief about that, union declines to endorse. We are just 1 week away, 8 days, from the Nevada caucus.
Can't stop him.
Meanwhile, Trump blackmails New York State. The DNC, apparently, according to documents, was intimately involved in the development of the Iowa Fail app. And Virginia voters will now have automatic voter registration available to them because elections matter, and the Democratic majorities in both Virginia houses has now approved. Soon to be signed, one hopes, by Northrop. I can't imagine he would. All that and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I have a confession to make. I have a cold. It will undoubtedly be a little bit annoying for me and for you. So,
and by cold, he means deadly sickness from China that he will not name.
I will. It could be. I don't know. But I've basically created a...
Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, yes. Emma, welcome. Happy Valentine's Day. I got you some form of virus.
Right.
But I've asked everybody to stay at least, arm's length away from me so that nobody gets sick. Of course, my children gave it to me. That was their present to me for Valentine's Day, and they just gave it early. So that was very sweet. They wanted to make sure they didn't forget. So we got a lot of things to go through. Emma, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you here. Ben Dixon will be joining us shortly, and before he gets here, because I don't want to make him. We're gonna talk more about Bloomberg. I mean, because, and we'll get into this. I think obviously more when Ben gets on, because Bloomberg has emerged, I think, as a huge threat to, well, there's like a whole series of things that he's a threat to.
Democracy,
the Democratic Party race, democracy. I mean, on and on.
The future of the Democratic Party.
Future of the Democratic Party.
Oh no!
And fortunately, there are enough good citizens out there who are not letting Michael Bloomberg have a run of things, despite the fact that he owns the airwaves and apparently any campaign staff and apparently any politician that he wants because of his money. But the one thing that money cannot buy you is, well, I suppose it could. He just hasn't turned it, and there is like a complete cone of protection. But this is a video that was, a couple of people have shot it because it from different angles. But the guy who first did this, do we know his name?
I replied calling him a king on Twitter, and he replied back to me, so I want to do him justice. I'll find it myself.
We have it up here. He goes by @Gramsci Gallo on Twitter. Joe Gallo.
Okay, so Joe Gallo. And let's take it. We'll take a video from, this is the perspective of somebody who was just next to Bloomberg, just shooting Bloomberg because he's walking around. Now, where is this? Is this, where, do we know where they are?
He's been in Texas recently, so I feel like it's more that this might have been where that was, but I don't know.
Okay, he's out and about, and people should also keep an eye on his his right hand, his body man. This guy's wearing a turtleneck in this thing. You might remember him.
Might have been North Carolina. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, it looks like it's obviously not somewhere north. And the guy behind him with the turtleneck, he was the first guy to hit the stage. When that, what's that?
He hugged the older woman.
Okay, he's in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Dressed like a villain. Dressed like the author that has an affair with Frank Underwood's wife, Claire Underwood.
Yes, and he's got a very strange. Well, I don't know. It's not a strange look, but it's a very dashing look. And he was the guy who
for
helped
the people.
He was the guy who helped
polycule.
the old lady off of the stage when she came up to say this is not a democracy, it's a plutocracy. And so he's always there doing this type of thing. And so here is Mike Bloomberg coming out of someplace in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Mike is just psyched that there's somebody who's excited to see him.
Hey, Mike, say stop and frisk.
Oh yeah.
Aww.
Yeah. Stop and frisk, sure, yeah.
The fact that he even said it at all was like mission accomplished.
Exactly.
By Mr. Gallo.
Here is Joe Gallo himself, Gramsci Gallo, on Twitter. This is a selfie shot. I guess this is part of the Gallo cam.
The true selfie for democracy.
Exactly. And he has some commentary after talking to Mr. Bloomberg.
Hey, Mike, say stop and frisk. Racist piece of shit, Mike.
American hero. American hero.
Oh yeah,
Now,
that's how you do it.
This stuff is particularly important, and we're going to get to it with Ben Dixon. But I don't know that there has ever been a scenario, broadly speaking, Emma, that where stuff like this is actually like legitimately meaningful, because there is an asymmetry to the warfare that is going on here.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw a little bit of it earlier in the primary cycle, not that much earlier, but the Wall Street Pete stuff I think had a lot of legs. going to his Wall Street fundraisers and protesting outside. So great work by New York Communities for Change and New York City DSA, who've been working on that. And I've attended one of those. I think those had a lot of viral legs. I mean, so much so that he's speaking in New Hampshire when these protests were happening really in New York, and people are chanting Wall Street Pete. So that was kind of a micro version of what we're seeing with Bloomberg. But Bloomberg's a much greater threat than Pete Buttigieg. To democracy.
Yes, I think that's the case. And I think, like, the question becomes, how does the word about Bloomberg get out? I mean, in New York, it's fascinating. And we'll wait for Ben to get on. He's going to be on in just a moment, I think. In the meantime, since we brought up Pete Buttigieg, I mean, the strange thing is, He's in the lead in terms of delegate counts.
By one?
By one or two. I can't remember what the count is specifically, but he's in the lead by delegate counts. However, from a polling perspective, both national and now looking at, there's a new AARP Review Journal poll that just came out from the 11th to the 13th. Sanders 25, Biden 18, Warren 13%, Steyer 11, Buttigieg 10%, and Klobuchar 10%. Now, I can't imagine Buttigieg can do it much better in North Carolina, so he's just hanging in there. But he knows that in Nevada, the caucus, there is a lot of union workers and Latino workers. And so here is Pete Buttigieg basically trying to show how simpatico.
He speaks 8 languages.
Oh, my God. Is he going to speak Spanish?
How simpatico he is with folks who speak Espanol.
Ay, caramba.
So much for the chance to join you. Gracias por invitarnos para hablar this evening. And I bring greetings from...
Play it again.
So much for the chance to join you. Gracias por invitarnos para hablar this evening. And I bring greetings from South Bend.
Oh, my God. There was some heckler, too, like someone who responded there. Did you hear that?
Now... Brendan and I have a little argument about this because Brendan says it was, and I said it's Esta Noche, and
it's definitely not that. I don't know. You thought it was Esta Noche?
Esta Noche.
Yeah, it's definitely Esta Noche.
Well, first of all, Brendan said Esta La Noche.
I said that to clarify that.
He was clarifying that it was gendered. But so
wow, you guys have not been using the app we always advertise.
Es verdad. No hacer la app.
It's like the scene in Bridesmaids where she tries to give the speech, and no one knows that movie as well as I do. Let's give a speech in Spanish.
But Buttigieg, I mean, he really was trying to showboat. He's a little bit tired. I think, I think he probably somewhere deep down inside realizes, like, this is it. I've peaked, and the rest is going to be just trying to figure out how I'm going to monetize this. And but it is what it is. It's been amazing that what Bloomberg has been able to do by popping up. I think Ben should be there. Ben, you there?
I'm here, Sam.
Okay, great. Ben, you're here. Emma's in studio.
Hey, Ben. Great work.
Hey, Emma. Thank you. Great to speak with all of you.
All right. So first, let's just start with this, okay? Ben, tell us can you tell us where you found the audio, or was that a secret source or what?
You took my joke from me. I was going to say it was a secret meeting that was it was sitting on YouTube, Sam. It had been there for 5 years. And I think it took 3 Google searches to realize that the Aspen Institute speech existed. Then another one to find out that he tried to suppress it. And then another one to find the audio. And so all I did was I clipped it. I cleaned it up so it could actually be more audible. And I, of course, did the transcripts and the slideshow that everyone is seeing. And then I just went and hammered the Twitter, social media, and shared it with as many people as I could.
And then you sprinkled your Bernie support onto the video so that it invalidates every single thing that was actually said.
Right, because, it's the fact that I'm a Bernie supporter, that it's the voodoo of being a Bernie supporter that actually made it go viral. So,
right. He wouldn't have said those things years ago if it wasn't for you supporting Bernie Sanders today in 2020.
Precisely.
But Ben, honestly, isn't this timing a little suspicious? Like, what made you do this now? Like, why?
The funniest thing, Sam, is that I almost didn't share it in the way that I did. When I found it, I just put it in my podcast episode that morning, and I left to do some work in the city, to do some video work downtown Atlanta. And it just kind of dawned on me later on. I'm like, well, damn, this is actually kind of important. Let me go home and do my due diligence and share it. So the fact is, the timing is really serendipity, right? It's just, it dropped in my lap Monday morning. I almost ignored it. And then by Monday afternoon, I realized what it was. And by Monday night, it had 1 million views. So, well,
that's what I was saying. Why in the afternoon?
As we all know, that's the Russian time, right? Apparently that's when the Russians are awake. At least that's what one person said on Twitter that got quite a few likes and retweets.
Right. That's when the Russian money hit your direct deposit finally hit your account, because that's when the banks opened up there. I just have to ask you one question, because we were talking about it before the show. I saw that you responded with a screenshot of a conversation with your mom and how she thinks that, or had thought that Bloomberg was endorsed by Obama. And I was telling these guys that, I've been to these Biden events, and they've been playing praise by Obama about Biden over the loudspeaker, or they have been at the Iowa event that I went to, kind of to give the perception that he'd been endorsed by Obama. It's crazy how insidious that is, and it seems like it's worked with Bloomberg too, with some people.
Right, which is hilarious because of the audio that came out of him saying, or not audio, but the transcript of him coming out saying that he thought Obama was arrogant. But that's the irony of it. But in terms of my mother, it's this most recent ad that he put out, the presidential ad, that it's giving a lot. And then also some local radio ads, but mind you, that it's giving the impression that he at least has the approval of Obama. And I think that's the game that you play with people who are in their 70s. Like, they're not going to really sit there and say, I wonder if this is just him talking or is it him endorsing. They're like, oh, there's Obama. Right. And he's taking advantage of that. He's pouring. You guys know how much he's pouring into this campaign in terms of advertisements. And it's really a deception. It's a sleight of hand that is working effectively.
Let me ask you this. Bloomberg has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on TV ads. He's also spending a tremendous amount of money on field work. But the TV ads are really the way that he's having this basically completely, and in some states completely open. Arkansas, Alabama, nobody's putting money in there, and he has this sort of like completely open playing field to completely define who he is,
right,
to the voters. And there's all this information that people in New York are aware of, and I think probably often presume that other people know, just because,
right,
we sort of bathed in this, and they don't,
right.
And which is why what you put out has had such resonance, because it's the first time that's been pierced. But here's the question, and obviously it may be tough for you to know, but the big, we're seeing numbers now where Bloomberg has got 21% approval in the African American community.
Yeah. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, what do you think the chances are that even your video starts to get into the networks that are not viable, like via TV, or ones that Bloomberg hasn't already bought? Because there's a lot of other stories about Bloomberg going in and just like throwing cash around to everybody.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, the biggest hurdle, if I can answer kind of in reverse, is the fact that he has this opportunity to define himself in ways that most people don't know him outside of New York. And so it's going to be the stories of the people in New York that's going to really define him if we can get the saturation level. One thing that I'm hopeful about in terms of culturally, it made what's the show right there in New York, The Breakfast Club. Charlemagne the God covered it on The Breakfast Club.
That's
and
huge.
Gave him the donkey of the day based on that audio. So that just shows you like there's a level of saturation that video is hitting right now that is honestly, unless we get some dark, evil money behind us, some dark money and some PAC money to actually start competing with him, this is our best shot is through the grassroots word of mouth. And it's amazing that this guy has a long list of things that we can honestly just send viral as long as we keep pounding the pavement. But it's really a David versus Goliath. I don't know how far one video will go. Thankfully, there's so much more that he's done that he needs to be held accountable for. But we're up against, he's buying all the best consultants. He's buying all the best field team. He's buying the best meme company with a Facebook reach of 60 million people.
Backfiring is big though for him. For another, just to pile onto that, like that backfiring and all the other meme accounts making fun of the sellout accounts that were posting things on behalf of him. That was another.
Oh, actually, no, I didn't see that. Where is that?
Wait, explain that, Emma.
Well, as a millennial, I could, and I have an Instagram. You could just people found out that Bloomberg was basically paying these meme accounts like Jerry Media. If you guys watch the Fire Festival documentary, there are these
the company that tricked people into going to Fire Festival is now being paid by Bloomberg to make memes.
Yes, and they have, but they're one of the most. They grew organically at the beginning of Instagram into one of the biggest Instagram accounts, meme pages throughout in the world, and then they became this huge social media marketing conglomerate, and then infamously were the people that promoted Fire Festival, and now have been hired by Mike Bloomberg, and they're just douchebags. But when they were posting memes trying to make Mike Bloomberg look cool because Bloomberg paid them.
Now, do they post the memes, or do they just make them and then seed them out and they have like a network in which they seed stuff?
I think it's a little bit of both, but they post the memes, and they have to say now legally, they used to not have to do so, say that this is paid for by Mike Bloomberg. But and so all of the other meme pages were making fun of them basically and posting.
Beautiful.
So it's just kind of something similar to what you're saying, Ben, is that he has all of these tools at his disposal, but the aggressive pushback by just regular people is so important. And just one wrinkle I wanted to add, because here in New York, if you're not black, there's white people just like Bloomberg because of all of this positive media coverage that he got while he was here, and it's just also saturated into the media as well.
Hashtag not all white people.
Well, no, I get it, but in general, when you talk, it's just really like Bill de Blasio gets all this negative media coverage here, but when Bloomberg was mayor, it was just less so. There was more of this orthodoxy surrounding him, and go ahead.
He paid for a lot of that.
Exactly.
I know people who were architects who build stuff for the city, and they've done it under the Bloomberg administration. They've done it under the de Blasio administration, and Bloomberg would actually use his own money at times. Now, I have a feeling, and Nomi Kans was here looking at his campaign's filings and noticing that when he buys stuff, he buys it from his own company. So he's taking his personal money, he is spending it on a campaign. The campaign, all the vendors are Bloomberg-owned entities. So he's just sort of like, he's just creating his own Bloomberg economy, essentially.
Cyclone. Where have we heard that before?
Right. And I have a feeling that this is what he was doing with the city often. He would kick in his own money to hire his own companies that would facilitate building things. But I'll also say about Emma's point about white people in the city, part of the reason why the white people in the city have such high favorability rating for Bloomberg is because Bloomberg basically, sort of was like a sieve Like the people who can afford to live in the city, are the people who like Bloomberg because he made it very, very hospitable to wealthy people and to everybody else not. And so there's a certain amount of self-selecting. In many respects, New York has become like Bloombergville. And so everybody's walking around going like, yeah, I love it now.
And Bill de Blasio ruined everything.
He ruined everything.
Trying to make homeless shelters.
Exactly. Gross.
Maybe I live in a bubble, but most of the white people that I know hate Bloomberg and also they don't have a lot of money either. People who are complaining
you do live
about
in a bubble.
gentrification.
Yeah.
You had it right from the beginning. Just statistically speaking, you live in a bubble. I'm not saying I don't either, but yes. Because I've had many people who have told me, I hear it from a lot of people like Bloomberg. And it's scary.
Yeah. Ben, just another quick question. Sorry, or you can go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's the most terrifying thing about this is how many people are willing to turn over the keys of our democracy to a person who can purchase it with his pocket change, right? He's not breaking a sweat on what he's spending. This money that he's spending means nothing to him, especially if you're saying it's going right back into companies that are connected to him anyway. And so I'm just shocked and amazed at how many people on the Democratic side feel like the solution to one racist Republican oligarch is another racist Republican oligarch. It's just kind of depressing, to be quite honest with you.
He's got much better manners, though.
Oh, yeah.
Can we agree on that?
He doesn't do the mean tweets.
Let's. I want to play this clip from
really
the New York
things,
Times. I want to play this clip from the New York Times. This is about somebody who was a kid, Tyquan. I think the Times produced this probably back while there was more sort of controversy on getting rid of stop and frisk. He recounts, and I think the year was 2013 when we were at peak stop and frisk, where there was 689,000, I believe it was, stops.
Jesus.
That year they found 800 guns. 800 guns with 630 or 80,000 stops.
But they had the guns at home, obviously. That was the worst part of what he said.
They kept them at home. That's why you didn't know. And this is a 2012 video. So this was even before the very peak of stop and frisks. But you're talking 300,000 or 400,000 maybe at this time. And Tyquan, who I believe he lived in Brooklyn, right? We're not playing the whole thing, but he lived in Brooklyn. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe. And here he is recounting basically what life was, and he did not take it sitting down. He was trying to be it sounds like he was not pushing too hard, but he just would demand on some level, like, why are you doing this? Here.
I've been taken in a lot of times because if you're stopping me, I'm gonna want to know why. And that's when you could hear a change in their tone. They start to get a little more aggressive, and you feel threatened. They were like, if you're gonna talk back, we're gonna take you in. If you're gonna ask questions, we're gonna take you in. You sit in a precinct for I would say 8-9 hours with a bunch of people you don't know. They put the cuffs on really tight, and it stinks, and you don't get fed. All this time, y'all know I'm innocent. They just kept me there till 4 in the morning and then let me out the back door. I would say it was happening at least 4 or 5 times in a month, because I was always outside, and I was always outside late. So if you're with a lot of people, you're a suspect automatically. From the time I was 15 to 18, I would say I was stopped, questioned, and frisked for at least 60 to 70 times. I needed a break from cops, and the only way I could get that was to stay home.
That was just a short clip of that video, but that's, that is the experience that I think so many kids had. And you had more stops of stop and frisk stops than there were, literally people in this neighborhood.
And sorry, really quickly, he tries to say that he stopped doing the program, but it was because the courts ruled it unconstitutional and forced him to stop. He would have continued to do this at whim, He
was still justifying it in 2015.
Listen.
Go ahead.
Exactly. 2015 and as recent as 2019, before he decided to run for president, there's evidence of him out there supporting stop and frisk. Listen, on 2 levels, actually on 3 levels, Michael Bloomberg is a significant problem, and I think everyone should be as mobilized and energized as we have been this week. We have to get him out of the paint. He has to be stopped above anybody else because of 3 reasons. One, in that clip that I shared, and just listen to the experience of that young man, it's horrifying to see how deep his belief, his philosophy, Michael Bloomberg's philosophy about black and brown people really runs, because it was a well thought out, carefully crafted and meticulous line of reasoning. Happened to be really bigoted, but he had really thought out why stop and frisk was justifiable. So his worldview about black and brown people is terrifying. That's his real belief. And he hasn't made any type of apology or explanation of how he evolved from that belief. So as far as I'm concerned, he still believes that. He's just saying he's sorry. The second thing is his governing principle. His solution to the problem of violence is to bring in more violence and to throw the boys up against the wall. I mean, that is a definitive governing philosophy. So what is he going to do when he's the president of the United States? Well, we don't know, because he's not really being asked these questions. And then the third thing, he's an oligarch buying this democracy with his pocket change. I don't like Pete Buttigieg, but I think I'm going to have to eat my words. I said I would never vote for him. But compared to Mike Bloomberg and what he's going to do to this democracy, I'd have to say there's anybody else I would support at this point to make sure that Mike Bloomberg does not steal this democracy from us.
Agreed.
Now, I also want to just add to what you're talking about, Bloomberg's perspective on race, because it is not confined to the issues of social of criminal justice, of crime,
right,
of guns. This is really important to understand that is one facet of his perspective on race, and another facet of his perspective on race can be seen in this clip. It's from Fora TV. It is a conversation that Bloomberg is having in September of 2008. Now, we are just on the cusp of the financial crisis. I mean, September, I think by September, we already had Bear Stearns basically get shuttered. I think they put chains on that. Lehman Brothers, I think, was just in the middle of the crisis. So people are starting to talk about it. But look, the bottom line is everyone knew. Not everyone. There was definitely a definitive number of people who were aware of what was happening, and now Bloomberg and part of this is sort of shrouded in a euphemism, is what he's talking about here. Mm-hmm. But what he's referring to when he says about these redlining things, in the 1970s, I believe it was, Congress passed a law called the Community Reinvestment Act, which said that you are no longer allowed to discriminate, not based upon where poor people are or
exactly
where black people live and other people of color live. And you must offer them not a special deal, not a reduced scrutiny. You must offer them the same thing you offer to white people in terms of loans. Same restrictions, same requirements. You must do that. This was not a special giveaway. It was you can no longer actively discriminate against them.
What year was that?
That was in the 70s that the CRA was passed. But this is him talking in 2008, blaming the financial crisis on the idea that too many black people got mortgages. Here it is.
You've made some reference to the elements that led to where we are today. Could you go a little bit deeper and tell us from your perspective, how did we get here? What are the root causes of the crisis that
you can go back. I would say it probably all started back when there was a lot of pressure on banks to make loans to everyone. Redlining, if you remember, was the term where banks took whole neighborhoods and said, people in these neighborhoods are poor, they're not going to be able to pay off their mortgages, tell them your salesmen don't go into those areas. And then Congress got involved, as local elected officials as well, and said, oh, that's not fair, these people should be able to get credit. And once you started pushing in that direction, banks started making more and more loans where the credit of the person buying the house wasn't as good as you would like.
Okay, now just to be clear, it was 77 was the passage of the CRA, and all it said was if you open an office in a low-income neighborhood and you're collecting deposits from them, you can't just use that money to fund stuff that is in a different neighborhood. You have to make credit available on the same terms. You have to make the same terms, which means that you have to have, like, you need to show the same income to debt ratio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that's so weird. It took 30 years for it to cause problems.
Well, there were other things that happened, but yes, that is true. And then the other thing is that there would be a lot of other reasons, a lot of other things that you would see, and it's very easy for people to Google this and say and just Google in was the CRA responsible for the financial crisis? If it had been, you would see the securities that ended up being toxic and filled with a lot more CRA loans. You would have seen CRA loans defaulting at a higher rate. They were actually backed by the FHA, and FHA didn't start dipping into those secured things until much later in the crisis. All of that is bunk. But the fact that he's sitting there basically saying this is a function of us loaning to black people, because
he didn't say black people.
Indeed,
right.
but he knows what redlining is all about.
It's
exactly.
so disingenuous, because redlining was about race. Like, they would give loans to working class white people, and that's how come white people were able to build more middle class wealth throughout the 20th century.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the most fascinating thing about this, is that he has been 100% transparent with who he is, his bigoted beliefs. He has no problem saying exactly, but now he needs the black vote, right? And so he's going around the country pouring millions of dollars into charitable organizations that are headed by black people, and they're either just being quiet and not saying anything, or they're coming out later on and endorsing him. He's throwing money into this mayor's initiative or training or whatever they were having at Harvard University, flew out, dozens of black mayors from around the country. And it's the opulence. Like, people are, it's the fact that he has all of this wealth that he's able to just circumvent his entire history that is just as problematic as Donald Trump. I'm sorry. When you line them up side by side, tell me how he's different than Donald Trump. I mean, maybe he can tweet coherently every now and then. Okay, congratulations.
He's more
Well, exactly.
Go back to go back to the Central Park Five, right? Donald Trump obviously notoriously took out that full page ad in the New York Times, still maintains that they were guilty despite the fact that they were exonerated by DNA evidence. But Bloomberg fought them tooth and nail over and over from getting any type of settlement money from the city. Right. A decent person, someone with some kind of moral fiber, would say, oh, these 5 young men, their lives were stolen from them. They've been inflicted with so much psychological trauma. No. I'm not even going to give you a penny. I'm going to fight to make sure you don't get anything. They eventually did get something. But
under de Blasio.
Under de Blasio. And de Blasio, part of what I believe he ran on part of that, right? Or he ran on ending stop and frisk. But that was under the umbrella of what he was talking about.
Check this out. So he did everything he could to not give the Central Park Five any money. But when he needs a black vote, he's flying around the country, opening up his checkbook and just paying off everybody that he possibly can pay off. Right. There's a level of hypocrisy that, I mean, don't get me wrong. Listen, I'm not trying to say that people who are taking the money are bad people. I know a lot of the consultants who are trying to get on his campaign because of how much he's spending. It's the structural problem that he has all of the wealth, that basically the amount of money it would take for you to go to the corner store and buy a Snicker bar, that's what he's using to buy our democracy. And that's the problem. That's the fundamental problem. Sam, one last thing. When you were talking about the other side of his racial problem, I thought you were going to go to his foreign policy and his buy-in to the war on terror and his language. So it's like foreign policy wise, racial justice, classism. I mean, he is the complete bag of shit. Right. Yep. We cannot. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're on air. My bad. But it's a problem, because in every category of what we stand for and fight for as liberals, progressives, I don't care what you call yourself, he is most certainly the worst person. But yet he's being championed because, watch this, because he has enough money to beat Donald Trump. Anybody you talk to, even with the black voters that I talked to who were considering him, thankfully, slowly but surely, they've seen this video and they're starting to turn around. These are anecdotes, obviously. But their reason for supporting him in the first place is because he has enough money to beat Donald Trump. Well, that's the problem, too. Right? If he's got enough money to do this with his pocket change, then that speaks volumes to how broken our system is.
Yeah, indeed. And you're right. I mean, there's a whole nother sort of set of policies regarding Muslims and what he did after 9/11, which in terms of race that are problematic. But I also want to just turn to this speech that came up from MIT that he gave in I'm not sure what year this was, but he is talking about education. Now, the sort of the symmetry here is that for at least a decade in this country, our education philosophy went down the toilet because of almost $1 billion that the Gates Foundation poured into an experiment in value-added teaching and using metrics to determine in high-stakes testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this speech in 2011 is in the heart of that from Michael Bloomberg. And we should note that New York City schools were highly segregated before he came in and became even worse under Bloomberg. And de Blasio has not had a lot of luck, but he has done some things that they're piloting programs. I know for a fact in District 15 in Brooklyn, in the middle schools, they have actually achieved they're starting to integrate the schools more. They're experimenting with different ways of doing this because it's not that quite easy. Nobody wants to leave their local school. But Bloomberg had not only bought into this corporate reform of education, which, incidentally, the Rand Institute, hired by the Gates Foundation to assess their own program after they had basically taken American education and thrown it off the rails, came back and said, we were wrong. We should probably just listen to educators. I mean, literally, that's what it said. And Bloomberg, of course, bought into it big time. He put a privatizer of schools, became the school board chair under Bloomberg. Here is Bloomberg at MIT talking about, I mean, this is the thing with oligarchs. They talk about stuff like they know exactly what needs to be done with total disregard for what experts say.
Look for the phrase ex cathedra in this clip.
Okay.
Oh, intelligentsia.
Well, in education, it is quality of teacher, quality of teacher, quality of teacher. And I would, if I had the ability, which nobody does really, to just design the system and say, ex cathedra, this is what we're going to do. You would cut the number of teachers in half, but you would double the compensation of them, and you would weed out all the bad ones and just have good teachers. And double the class size with a better teacher is a good deal for the students.
What? Galaxy brain, Jesus right? Christ. Like, cut the number of teachers in half and then just have the good ones. Oh, by what metric? Like, by like the statistical...
well, no, but that's exactly the point.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
But that's exactly the point. It's literally saying what I would do if I had full authority is I would use magic and create a system that just works better.
I know. I've just got to say, it's part and parcel of his overall paternalism. I mean, I've never seen such someone who just thinks that they can control everybody, from the soda ban, which Trump would win on. Which Trump would win on alone in the Midwest. Just say soda ban. It's over. It's over. Trump wins, right?
And to take away soda.
Right.
But that's a real thing, Emma.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Emma. That's a real thing. So the paternalism and the way that he wants to leverage the force of the government to implement that paternalism, right? He doesn't want to be paternalistic and say, let's figure out why there's poverty. Let's figure out why impoverished people are drinking bad sodas. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that they can't really afford a lot of good food and they're living in food deserts. He doesn't want to do that. What he wants to do is have a punitive action, tax them so that we can control their behavior. I'm sorry, I just had to get that in there.
No, you're right. I mean,
problem.
But it's just, you're exactly right, Ben, and it's part of what we've been talking about, stopping and frisking black and brown people just because he feels like he has the authority to override the Constitution and won't stop doing it until the federal courts have to actually get involved. Just fantasizing about cutting teachers in half and just not physically cutting the amount of
probably
cutting the amount of teachers in half and just putting the good ones there. It's like he has. Ego is too light of a word.
Yes.
It's he believes he can be the overlord of people.
And he was the Mad King of New York for longer than you're supposed to be allowed to be the mayor.
He changed the Constitution so he could have another term.
He is the law.
What that also I think exposes is that he's never really had a conversation with any number of educators that he's listened to, because the idea that you can have a good, right, and how you define that and how you measure that and how you assess that is would be in many respects impossible. But a good teacher, what a good teacher does basically over a baseline is has the ability to meet various students where they are and address what their particular needs are in learning this stuff. And if you double the number of kids in a classroom, you're going to diminish the ability of even what you consider a good teacher.
Good teacher.
And
absolutely.
you're creating an environment that is doomed to fail. And so the idea that like what we need to do is offer more money to get the good teachers in, because only the good teachers, according to Bloomberg and the way that he perceives things, they would be teaching, but they want more money. And so they go into finance or wherever it is they go, which of course also knows nothing about teachers.
And also it's just like, it sounds like a 2 a.m. snorting lines and cutting them up conversation fantasy about like not someone who's seriously legislating or actually thinking about the real issues. It's like a coked out frat boy thinking about how he's going to make schools better.
It's like one of Trump's 3 a.m. Adderall tweets.
Right.
Yes. And the idea that there's like this host of like really good teachers who are just waiting in line for we just got to get the pay up by another 15, 25% or maybe 30% or 50%. And then I'll become a teacher.
The markets will take care of it.
Right. It's just absurd.
Well, I mean, look, spending some time as a teacher, I would love that 50%. I would have loved that 50% increase. But the red tape alone was not commensurate with that. So that's not the problem. The pay is not the problem. A lot of people who teach out of the passion for it. Exactly. And this speaks exactly to what all of you have said. As soon as you pack those rooms with 10 more students, let alone like doubling it, just 10 more students will break any teacher. I don't care how good they are.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows that this is a guy who has not had a single conversation that he has listened to with someone who's actually teaches. I mean, that's the thing, is that I only know this because I've had conversations with teachers and educators. He clearly has not had that conversation with anybody where he believes that like teachers go into it and money is a primary factor. If money was a primary factor, there would not be any good teachers.
And anyone who just has a cursory knowledge of education knows that class size is a huge indicator of how students actually absorb information. I don't know that much about education policy. It's fairly convoluted, but that's pretty basic, right, Ben?
Right. And then on the other side of it, that's absolutely it, class size. But again, look at how he wants to implement his paternalism, because the real problem as a teacher, I taught in extremely wealthy neighborhoods, and then I taught in like I needed to carry a gun neighborhood, like extremely impoverished neighborhoods. He doesn't want to address the fact that poverty has to be one of the leading indicators of how you perform in school. Yep. Like there are kids who are able to get all of the resources that they need to do anything they possibly could. But then the next year when I was in the poor school, we had books that you couldn't pick up without them falling apart. Right. And even more than that, you had kids who were sleeping on couches, kids who didn't have clean clothes. Like we had to wash some kids' clothes sometimes. So he doesn't implement his paternalism in a way that's like to promote the general welfare, like out of love and concern. He uses it to be punitive. You're going to make these teachers take double the class now? Right? Ask any teacher. That's like the worst punishment that you could give them. You could probably make them work through the summer, and they'll do that before they would want you to double their class size.
And another thing, just to add on to that, it's part of this whole privatization charter school philosophy that basically says that if you're the smartest kid and you actually have are worth it, you'll be able to go to these select charter schools, and right. the kids who deserve it out of the poor neighborhoods will be successful. And promoting that kind of philosophy, it's like it's out of a movie. It's like they watched Akeelah and the Bee, and they've decided that that's how everything should go.
I just want to say,
sure.
Since we're on education, I have to say this. One of my, the two reasons I left teaching was one, because YouTube was starting to get popular, and I knew eventually they'll get me on video cussing students out. So that was the first reason I left. But the second reason was it was just too depressing after you spent hours helping a kid see how smart they are and helping them understand a problem, and then they go home. And they go home and they don't have food. They go home and they're in a neighborhood that's not conducive to learning. They go home, they can't even wash their clothes. And then they come back, expect them to remember and retain anything, when every day it's a reset with poverty.
Yep.
So it's a real thing. Like everything that Mayor Bloomberg does, it never addresses the underlying problem, which is poverty. It always uses how can we use the government to crush this problem? Throw the boys up against the wall, double the classroom size, tax poor people so they don't drink sugary sodas. He is an authoritarian in his own way. And the fact that he's going to ascend through the Democratic Party because he has enough money to beat Donald Trump, what the hell dystopic timeline did we get knocked into?
And he's a Republican. Let's just put that out there.
He's literally a Republican.
Vote blue no matter who, even if that blue is red.
Except for Bernie. Don't vote for Bernie because he's not really blue.
Right.
I think he's probably technically like a Straussian, right? Isn't it like the Straussians who had that sort of, but we should say, let's put this up. Study Hall at Study Hall XYZ is proud to announce a new initiative. It is the Negative Bloomberg Meme Microgrant. Make and post an original meme about Michael Bloomberg's history of racism, Islamophobia, sexism. Yeah. I would add on that pro-corporate education reform. I mean, this is the thing, is that, like, don't sleep on his being a pro-corporate high-stakes tester because we don't hear about that as much anymore because a lot of that is ebbed around the country. The impetus, but he's that guy. If you like Arnie Duncan and you like the high stakes testing, you're going to love Michael Bloomberg. Here it is. You can make this thing. You tag Study Hall, and they Venmo you $5, and everyone enjoys the meme. This is
that's so good. I'm a part of Study Hall. I'm going to let my dues lapse and check on that. They're very good.
There you go.
Yeah. We need to raise money for them to make sure that they can keep that stuff going. So,
Ben, just give us a sense, like, where are you going? I know you have a bunch of interviews today. I'm just curious because, I mean, what is so, I guess, educational about your experience there is, like, this is what has to happen. Like, literally, this is the only way that these messages about Bloomberg are going to cut through the mess. I mean, hopefully, I think it was appropriate for people to point out that the rules were broken, essentially, to allow him into the debates. But I think ultimately that's going to be a positive because he needs to have these questions asked to him to his face, and so that there is at least some mechanism in which to get this information out. But where are you getting interviewed today? Anywhere like... you doing anything NPR, that's mainstream?
I'm on NPR in a few.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, NPR in a few minutes. And I've done quite. I don't think is Huffington Post mainstream now. I don't know where they stand on things.
NPR is big. That is very helpful, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a lot of people are interested in what we're doing now, which is #MyBloombergStory. And it's just a collection of stories, some video, some just are tweets of their experiences in New York, mostly about stop and frisk, some about the housing crisis, what they call Bloomberg leases, a lot of different stories. So Huffington Post was interested in that. So really, I mean, honestly, I cover presidential politics, like, you know, just like most every other leftist show on YouTube and podcasts. And so to me, it's kind of like all hands on deck, because who's the biggest threat right now? It's Michael Bloomberg. I mean, it's almost like a matter of comparison. Like, as much as I was upset with people being fond of Joe Biden, holy hell, I'll take Joe Biden over Michael Bloomberg any given day. And so here he has been able to slide in here at the last second. So I only say that to say that I might seem a little fixated with it, but I don't really know in terms of presidential politics what's more important right now than stopping Michael Bloomberg.
You're doing a public service. I needed to be restrained and handcuffed last night to like prevent myself from tweeting just horrible things about Mike Bloomberg. I've never been so incensed. I always thought I would vote for the Democratic nominee. Like, I don't know. It's just nominating an actual authoritarian Republican might be a little bit of a bridge too far for me.
That's a stretch, right? That's a stretch. And I take back everything I said. I don't want Pete to win. I don't want Amy to win. I don't want Joe Biden to win. I would go definitely work for Warren and Sanders. But at this point, if it's a choice between any of the remaining five, and Michael Bloomberg, I'm going to do the Pete dance. I'll get out there and say corny jokes just like Amy Klobuchar. I swear on everything, man. I will carry Joe Biden around myself and tell everybody he's okay, even though he's not. I'll do whatever's necessary to stop Michael Bloomberg from becoming our nominee.
It really is stunning how, and there's been a lot of reporting now on just, you know, how much money he has donated to his various campaigns, Republican and Democrat, to get endorsements. He has endorsements now, I think, from 3 or 4 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, which can be directly tied into campaign donations. He donated $3 million to the reelection of Rick Snyder in Michigan, just months before Snyder went on to poison hundreds of children more in Flint, Michigan. He is draining the coffers, or I should say he is draining essentially or pulling all the assets away from down ballot tickets. I don't know if you've seen Ryan Grimm's story on this. He is a malignant effect. But Ben, I know you got to go. I appreciate the call today. And folks, check out the Benjamin Dixon Show. Give Ben some support. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks so much, Sam.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ben has to go to NPR, but we just scooped NPR again.
I know.
Again.
I was surprised. Well, not surprised. I'm just, he's a big get today. I'm not surprised.
Emma, what?
I'm not surprised. That's the wrong. I just feel like he's like probably doing a ton of stuff.
Is the word that you were looking for?
I'm humbled.
Just figure like there's opportunity costs.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, he comes on the show all the time.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody has a show at noon. That's why it's the dead time. That's why we get all the big guests right then. That's how we got Emma.
Oh, come on.
I would like to see some of these drafts in your untweeted folder, Emma.
No, I just sent it, all of them last night. But I mean, I said that I don't know if I could vote for Bloomberg, and I got yelled at by my stepmom and by my roommate and her boyfriend. And
are they all reading your tweets? Or did you say that in person?
It went kind of viral. Yeah, they're all reading my tweets.
I think that was good provocation. They need to hear that.
Yeah, it's a teachable moment for the people in your life.
Yes. Well, my stepmom is an education reporter for the Wall Street Journal, so I don't know.
That cuts both ways.
Okay.
Has she read the Rand report? You should ask her about that.
She loves charter schools.
Does she... Well, I've got some stuff for you, some information for you.
Class trader.
That's all I'm going to say. I feel bad. I love her, but we disagree.
Well, I mean, she's wrong, and that's why you disagree with her. I mean, charter schools in and of themselves, I mean, in a vacuum, would be good as experiments like they were set up to be. They were not supposed to be set up to be an ends. They were set up to be a means to develop things, to allow a certain amount of nimbleness and try and experiment new things. But they have proven that they're not scalable to the extent that they are successful. Even supporters of charter schools. I had one on the other day. What was his name again? Brendan, you can pull up his name.
Not important.
The charter guy. He was embedded at Success Academy for a year, and he walked away saying, well, it is the case that basically what they do, they don't necessarily cherry pick students, they cherry pick parents. And they get only those parents who have, Pondicio. He described it as like people who will get with the program. And not even as much as he was being skeptical of the charter's success because of that, he still didn't even know that like when he was saying there was already biased and unaware of the fact that like it's not just a question of they want to get with the program. They are fortunate enough that maybe their parents live next door and somebody can pick up the kid at 3 every day, to check them out, or that they have the ability to go from their job and take an hour in the morning once a month for the parent teacher conference or whatever it is. And his argument, though, at the end was like, this is like a free private school for low-income people, and they shouldn't be denied that choice any less than rich people.
But it's exactly what you're saying. It's a selection process that's just completely driven by a Randian individuality cult. Like, they don't even realize that it's just a part of the very systems and bootstraps theory that have created the problem in the first place.
It's Hunger Games.
Darwinism.
It's Hunger Games here, and it's like you're a couple of you are going to be lucky enough to get the free ham, and the rest of you, sorry, like that's basically
and the ones
it.
who get it are the ones who deserve it, and then there are the undeserving poor who deserve nothing.
Well,
it's just like literally a lottery too.
Right, it's a meritocracy myth, and again, I use the what's the movie with Hilary Swank where she's like a teacher for all those low-income people, or Akilah and the Bee, who just rises above everyone because she's so much smarter despite her circumstance. This is real life. We have to institute social programs that help everybody, not just the select few that are lucky enough to get the
lottery. Right, exactly.
Thrown into the
those
pile.
Films are like literally bloated with ideology.
Right.
You hate to see it. Also, Maggie Gyllenhaal, weirdly enough, did a pro-charter school film that she, I think, directed and starred in. Crazy. Very disappointing. I don't know. I still talk about celebrities like they're my friends.
She's a lefty, I feel like. Well, I just love her from... Did you ever watch that show on HBO with James Franco and her? It was so good, from the guy from The Wire. I'm blanking on the name. The Deuce.
The Deuce, yeah. Good show.
I'll love her forever because of that role. Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the left bought into this corporate education reform. I mean, it was Obama pushed a lot of it, Arnie Duncan. And
Cory Booker in my home state.
Cory Booker pushed it. I mean, part of it is also that it's driven by a lot of very wealthy hedge fund money, in part because...
Or Zuckerberg parachuting in to get some good press ahead of the social network.
Indeed. And part of it is a function of like when you get that much money, it's sort of like, I went to school, so I must know how people learn, and I can just
created a
parachute.
Bloomberg terminal, so
exactly.
I know exactly that we need to cut teachers in half, magician style.
And then there's also another healthy dose of hedge funders who are like, oh, this is a great real estate play. And we can fund these schools and get discounts on real estate, and then we do it for a certain period of time, and then we'll flip the real estate, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'll just say, I'm in a weird spot because I also do some like correspondent reporting stuff, but I also do all my opinion things. I can't even pretend to be fair to Michael Bloomberg. Like I can't even pretend to hide my disdain.
You'd have to be disingenuous.
He represents everything we're fighting against, specifically like at TYT, where we're so focused on money and politics. It's like it's the most disgusting regression of everything we've been fighting for, where because we're so fearful of Trump that we're going to allow perhaps one of the worst people who could potentially ever have power in the Democratic Party. I mean, worse than Joe Manchin, worse than the most conservative members that currently hold power of the Democratic Party. Allow him to take hold because of that fear and just descend into complete plutocracy. It's dangerous on levels that I don't even think some people completely grasp.
I think
what's
so,
the
and I
point
think
of beating
part of
Trump if you end up with a more competent version of Trump.
Well, I think the part of the problem is that an enormous amount of people who are supportive of Bloomberg right now simply have no idea about who he is or what his policies are. The only thing that they know is coming from a complete inundation of 30-second commercials. And I mean, he has effectively commodified himself. He is like a bar of soap, and there is no one there to say like, hey, that soap smells bad, or it's going to give you a rash.
What's your take on him being on the debate stage? Do you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
I think any opportunity...
I'm leaning towards that too.
I think any opportunity for him to actually have to face a question from someone who is not paid by him is positive.
Well, he'll be on stage and he'll get to ooze that charisma that's made him so famous.
I think it'll expose the charisma, and I think it will give an opportunity for people, someone to say, and look, particularly going into South Carolina, I would imagine that every candidate there is highly motivated to essentially express some type of solidarity with the African American community. And so there is a lot of incentive to discuss those issues in particular. I would imagine that Warren and Sanders, who both have a critique.
Well, Warren's already gone after him, which
yes.
I was happy to
see. In fact, do we have that clip of Brendan? Did you put that one? I sent it into the.
I've radicalized my boyfriend, so he's been sending me all this anti-Bloomberg stuff, and specifically the sexual assault. I'm trying to find it in our messages. Did you read some of the details of, or not sexual assault? I'm sorry, harassment.
That's the other whole. Hold on, let's do this here. Let me,
okay.
Brendan. Matt. I'll give you this clip. This is Warren had this to say, and they just they basically just got it up there. Social media got it up there very quickly, and then we should go into the whole host of
which is, by the way, how she should have been running this whole time, and back to when she was.
You know what? This is exactly right. Is that she lost the thread, and maybe the idea that there's an oligarch in the race now threatening to win. Will at least, hone her message back to where it was. But
I doubt it. I think it's too late.
I think it's too late. But I mean, it would be nice if she just this is the way that she spent the rest of the campaign, to the extent that she's in it, talking this way.
This has been some presidential primary already. We've been going at this for about a year. Some people got in a little later than others. Michael Bloomberg came in on the billionaire plan. Just buy yourself a nomination. But I want to point out that a video just came out yesterday in which Michael Bloomberg is saying, in effect, that the 2008 financial crash was caused because the banks weren't permitted to discriminate against black and brown people. To be clear about this, that crisis would not have been averted if the banks had been able to be bigger racists. And anyone who thinks that should not be the leader of our party.
Yeah, that's well done.
It's her bread and butter.
Yep.
I mean, it's indisputable that she's excellent on that issue. Indisputable. Yep. So I don't really want to argue it. Other issues, maybe not so much.
Just doesn't do it for me anymore the same way, watching her rail against the oligarchs.
I
don't think it takes anything away from what she's done in the Senate on that issue.
No. And
how she's run her campaign into the ground.
And she's going to, in the event that Bernie Sanders...
And even before the Senate.
Yes, well, definitely. In the event that Bernie Sanders wins, or in the event that Michael Bloomberg wins or Donald Trump wins, she's going to be a hugely important force in the Senate, I think.
Unless she's Secretary of Treasury or whatever in a Sanders administration, which although she might have just completely. Although
I don't think so.
I think it's over. I think I think they buried that. But,
yes, I mean, I am sure of it.
Can I just quickly read this excerpt about Bloomberg sexual harassment? Really?
Yes.
Quick? So from 1996 to 1997, 4 women filed sexual harassment or discrimination suits against Bloomberg, the company. One of the suits included the following allegation. When Sakio Sakai Garrison, a sales representative at the company, told Mike Bloomberg she was pregnant, he replied, "Kill it." Bloomberg went on, she alleged to Mother, "Great, no, 16," in reference her complaint said to the 16 women at the company who were then pregnant. To these allegations, Garrison added another one. Even prior to her pregnancy, she claimed Bloomberg had antagonized her by making disparaging comments about her appearance and sexual desirability. What is the guy dumb and blind? He is alleged to have said upon seeing her wearing an engagement ring. What the hell is he marrying you for?
Seems like a nice guy.
Wow, he's one to talk.
I mean, the only way this is interesting is that all the people that are lining up behind him, professional liberals, that made a huge deal out of the grab him by the pussy comment.
Or like that weird essay that Bernie wrote in college.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like someone I worked for's past blog posts.
We can't nominate Bernie because of what he wrote in the 70s, but Michael Bloomberg. So we need to install Michael Bloomberg because he has the money to beat Trump.
Unreal. I mean, people talk about Trump derangement syndrome in this derogatory way, but like, is there a... This is the manifestation of it.
Yeah, I mean, and this was, again, this was predictable on some level. I mean, it is a normal reaction, one that back in 2016 in July when I had my little conversation with Jimmy Dore that is often referenced around here. One of my biggest fears was following a Trump. You get the likelihood of getting a Obama but worse is obvious because people are just like, I'll do whatever appears to be the safest bet. And
well, you were proven right there.
Well, I mean, we're not there yet. I mean, it's quite possible we end up with Bernie, which would be a much better situation.
Totally, but that would be, that's against enormous institutional odds, and the fact that Biden completely imploded. There were a lot of dominoes to fall.
If Joe Biden was not literally physically incapacitated at this point, I think that he'd be walking away with the nomination. I mean, sad to say. But
because I mean, Ryan Graham has made this point so much, and that is that the Democratic base that has been built up over years and years has been institutionally designed to be more conservative than than the current progressive base, more risk averse and older, upper middle class, white, and sometimes elites who dominate the party. That's this infrastructure that has been created since the Clinton era and since a little bit before. And so Bernie's path to being the nominee is a lot harder than his path to winning the presidency because he polls so well with independents. But within the party structure that's currently in place, there are a lot of people who hate Bernie, would want someone more like Biden or even a Bloomberg because they've been so shell-shocked and, taken to a point where they believe that progressive things cannot happen and almost don't even want them to happen because they're wealthier.
And I think there's two elements of that to break that down. Institutionally, there's just people who can get plugged into a network with Bloomberg or plugged into the network with Biden or plugged into the network with another Democratic candidate. What Sanders represents, I think, to the institutional Democrats is like, I'm going to be out of a job or right. I'm not there. There's not going to be the same opportunities for me to make a living. And I think for Democrats writ large, yeah, I think he becomes more scary. And someone like Bloomberg, who just sort of oozes a certain the technocratic, no drama. I just get it done. If you are, unless you're actually on the other end of my policies. And yes, so I think that's true. I think it's much harder for Bernie to get through the primary than it will be in the general election. Knock on wood.
I mean, one thing this indicates to me is that the center has totally fallen out of American politics. Like, there are no regular Democrats right now that are viable candidates.
That's a great point because, oh my God, having this conversation about how it's a left on one side and a right on the other and the center's where you need to win, like, it shows me you don't understand politics at all and you've just been, like, that's what you were taught in political science 101 or history class in in junior year of high school. That's not how things work now.
Yeah, like Bloomberg is not a centrist. He's a right-winger.
It's about winning over the apoliticals. And like that's why I love the Joe Rogan endorsement, right? He speaks to this entire swath of usually white, millennial, apolitical, largely men who follow politics kind of like, you know, cursorily. I'm tired. You know what I mean. And the fact that he, as just a regular guy, was able to say, I trust Bernie, even though people have painted him as kind of this right winger, that's so indicative of how most people see politics. Can I trust you? Are you going to represent my interests? It's not, are you in the middle of these two poles? And if you're thinking of politics that way, you're out of date and you're dumb.
Well, I mean, that is the big theory that Bidikofer, is it Rachel Bidikofer, has been promoting, is that we're living in an era of polarization such that they're really the swing voter doesn't really exist anymore. What you have is to the extent that they swing between low and high propensity to vote. But ideologically, they just land on one side or the other. They are there. And it's just a question of whether they feel motivated to come out or that the agenda speaks to them in some way. And there was numbers that came out of New Hampshire. Trump, and this is indicative of it. It's not, it's sometimes hard to sort of glean from these things, but in 1996, when Clinton was the incumbent in New Hampshire primary, he got 76,000 people voted for him. I don't recall him being challenged in any serious way. George Bush, I don't think he was challenged at all. Got 53,000 votes, 54,000 in New Hampshire in 2004. Obama got 50,000 votes in 2012 during the primary. Trump got over 130,000 votes. Now, that's just indicative that this is going to be there's going to be a lot of people who are going to come out to vote. And it's just a question of who's going to maximize on their side of the ledger. And the thing about Bloomberg that scares me from an electoral standpoint, he's a classic case of like, I'm afraid he's going to lose and I'm afraid he's going to win. Right. But in terms of losing, there is the idea that he is going to bring out, when you have Donald Trump at 95% approval rating amongst Republicans, that he is going to convince, some significant segment of the Republican electorate, particularly in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and Wisconsin, to come vote for him is a pipe dream. But what is far more likely is that Donald Trump is going to exploit this guy's record in Milwaukee and in Detroit and in Philadelphia, and he is going to depress Democratic voters, and that is the name of the game.
We saw it. We just saw it. Yeah. And Bloomberg's an even more elitist version. He's not in the cultural zeitgeist in the way Hillary Clinton was.
That's right.
And, so that's why he's able to capitalize now. But as soon as that record's delineated even a little bit more, like he epitomizes elitism. Just show the photos of him hanging out with Trump. Like, are there photos of Bloomberg with Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know.
He's in the flight logs.
Yes, there are. There's with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right.
We also have this in 2011. Matt Binder just surfaced this. Probably a good time to play it.
You say that you're a big fan of Donald Trump.
I'm a friend of Donald Trump's. He's a New York icon.
You've actually been quoted saying you're a big fan, but let me ask you, do you take him seriously as a presidential candidate, and what do you think of him making such a big deal about the issue of whether or not Barack Obama was born in the United States?
Look, anybody can run for president if you're 35 and an American citizen and born here. The president was born here. This birther issue is more than one person. There's a lot of groups that have glommed onto this.
You say...
Oh, my God. That's crazy. Even I am a little bit shocked by that for some reason.
That what he says that...
Well, he kind of... we need to see more context of that clip, actually. It needs to be longer. Because he says Obama was born here, but many people have glommed on. I'm not sure what he says after that.
I thought he was trying to like both sides it a little.
No, I think he was saying that he was just trying to protect Trump there. But what Trump is going to say is, Mike Bloomberg did every favor I ever asked him for. I called him up and he just said, sure.
And he did.
I said, come on, The
It's all
Apprentice.
true.
I said, come on, The Apprentice. And I got to be honest with you, it took a lot of takes. It wasn't good.
And he's 5'4".
Do we have that video? We played that video some time ago, right? We get dinged for that.
We thought Lil Marco played. Look at how Lil
Right.
Mike's. I mean, what a mini Mike.
Oh my god,
that might be his best one. Oh, that's
He's gonna
good.
get owned so bad. You know, one thing
Again, the soda ban. It's over.
I just don't know. It's
I think the
crazy.
guns also.
Guns, soda, like all these things. Like there's nobody. I don't know. It's beyond. It's crazy to me that this conversation has gotten this far.
He's got like the classist cultural contempt that liberals are hated for having, and none of the good things about liberals.
That's a great point. That's exactly what it is.
He's a Republican that is against soda and guns. Like I don't know what the appeal is.
Well, that
he
is
might
the
do
thing.
something about
is
climate
that,
change.
That is the thing. Is that socially conservative, economically liberal, or leftist is an effective. But the idea of being socially liberal and fiscally conservative, that is on the wane big time. That is, I mean, we're talking now like, we're 10 years too late for that. It's a real.
But is it socially liberal to ban soda? I don't know.
I mean, I think it probably is
racist and sexist things.
Well, I mean, it's like to ban soda. I mean, on some level, it's like forced vaccinations. I mean, it is. I'm going to impose a certain policy because it is going to be.
That
I mean,
is not the same thing.
It's more like authoritarian than liberal.
Because forced vaccinations help. I guess it helps the public health too, but it's
that's justified authoritarianism,
right?
I mean, I personally don't have a problem with the soda ban. I think the issue was that rather than reveling in how you can control that behavior that way, you should also be offering things like we're going to promote more produce we're going to take these enterprise zones that we're happy to give out for major manufacturers, and we're going to give it to bodegas if you have X amount of fresh produce or something
independent of the merits. It's just the play, how it
the
plays.
Politics are bad. I mean, without a doubt.
Well, you're putting people in a double bind when you create poor health outcomes with policies of austerity and then punish those very same people with regressive taxation.
I don't think. I mean, I think there's other options besides soda in these bodegas, and there will be. And I mean, they'll be replaced. And the fact is that the only reason why we have sodas there, anyways, is because we are subsidizing corn to the extent that you can put corn syrup in these things, and it become cheap to produce, cheaper almost than water at that point.
We had some foreign policy related to like sugar too, also. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to die on this hill. There are some areas where big government regulation, I will concede, makes us healthier. Like, I don't know, I'd probably quit vaping pretty quickly if I couldn't buy Juul pods at the bodega.
Right.
It probably
And-
makes me a bad anarchist.
The reason
to say
why you're
that.
vaping is because the taxation that happened on cigarettes, definitely regressive, without a doubt, but has saved society a tremendous amount of money.
Bloomberg said the good thing about that stuff was the regressivity, whereas we say like that's
Exactly.
just like something we have to. It's I forget what the phrase is, but it's something we just have to deal with
It's
and
an
maybe
evil-
mitigate some other
necessary evil, or whatever.
Yes. His perspective on it was far too celebratory of the ex cathedra element of it.
Well, what was he using? God, I can't talk. Intelligence. How do you say?
Don't worry, I
Just
can pronounce
whatever.
anything on this show.
No, he said it weirdly.
I can't even say culinary
Intelligentsia.
correctly.
I can read things, and I'd say it right in my head, but when it comes out. But again, like, he was referring to people on the coast and then derisively talking about people in the middle of the country and saying they were not a part of the intelligentsia.
Yeah, here this is about him talking about trans sort of issues.
Oh boy.
Think about it. We, the intelligentsia, people who could make it into this room, we believe in a lot of things in terms of equality and protecting individual rights. that make no sense to the vast bulk of people. They're not opposed to you having some rights, but there's a fundamental disconnect between us believing the rights of the individual come first and the general belief around the world, I think it's fair to say, that the rights of society comes first.
Okay, well, that's
and so I don't know how many are familiar with the bathroom issue in the United States. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Bathroom.
If you want to know, is somebody a good salesman, give them the job of going to the Midwest and picking a town and selling to that town the concept that some man wearing a dress should be in the locker room with their daughter. If you can sell that, you can sell anything.
Okay, you know what? People won't care. They won't care about that issue if you are an economic populist and you say you're going to give them health care.
Yeah, like
that's how you get those issues.
I think. Look, the to the extent that people care about it, I mean, I think it's drummed up, and I think there are definitely some people who are going to be nervous about that. But I think the idea that it's a function of a lack of sophistication is really the issue.
And also the idea that just the very idea of trans people is something that comes from the academy. Like, most transgender people are working class because most people are working class, and actually trans people are disproportionately poorer than the general population. So to say that this is like they're like these creatures of the academy is just offensive hogwash.
There's a trans people in North Dakota I can
right.
confirm.
Well, I mean, I think the idea is, I mean, he is just convinced that there are concepts that cannot be sold to the American public because they don't have the sophistication that he has.
Well, and then just bring it back quickly. I mean, we're obsessed with Bloomberg, but that's all I can think about these days. Like, just to bring it back to the paternalism, he thinks that many people are need to be ruled over because they don't know what's best for them, and it's this old school senatorial, I don't know, thing, and it really does resonate with some centrist liberals on the coast. I can speak to that.
Without a doubt, and I imagine there are. It speaks to some in the center of the country as well. I mean, there is the idea. Bloomberg speaks of human beings as if he is a god. Like that he just
he ruled that way as well.
Exactly.
Well, it goes back to the divine right of kings, right? This kind of ideology that keeps the ruling system in place, and we have one still, and it's very much on display in Bloomberg.
And he said that the people who could make it into this room.
Right. Yes.
Right?
You have all earned your way in here in some fashion.
I mean, Bloomberg is the first candidate who's taught me vocabulary, though, because I've never heard of ex cathedra.
I've never either.
That is a very, I am a ruling class person type of word.
Maybe he is smarter than us.
Let's take a break. We're going to go into the fun half. We've got a couple of more clips. I know you've got to get going soon, but
I can stick around 2:15. Then
there you go. And I think around that time, supposedly we're going to have a special guest come crash the studio. I don't know if they're done gaming downstairs or whatever they do at Chapo Trap House, but
don't give it away.
Oh, okay, I didn't. Forget that. Folks, here's just a little bit of house cleaning before we go into the fun half. Next week, we are on vacation. But, of course, the way that we do vacation around here is we give you all new content. Yes, indeed, all new content. So Monday through Friday. Plus, my intention is to cover the debate on Wednesday night solo. If I can get the tech ready, like a Twitch streamer, I'm going to be doing it. And if I can get my kids, it's going to cost me a lot of money to pay Milo to keep Saul shut up during that entire time.
You going to play Oregon Trail?
What's that?
You going to Twitch any games, or just you're just going to stream it out? I was suggesting you should play Oregon Trail.
I'm so close. I think when Saul actually gets just a little bit older, I know. I mean, that's what I thought my divorce would bring about, more gaming, but I just didn't. I couldn't close the deal.
Reach out to Hassan. I think he knows a thing or two.
I was just on. I was just on Hassan's Twitch stream.
I don't even know how to get onto a Twitch stream. Like, do I go to twitch.com? Like,
you do.
I just went to Hassan's house and I got on that way. Right. That's the only way I know how.
You go to twitch.com.
Okay, great.
And then I did twitch.com/Hassan, I think it is, right? But I'm sure if you just Google Hassan Twitch stream, you could also find it that way. And so we will be here all next week. And also, if you're a member, we will probably put some special bonus material up there. You probably saw the 2 tests that we did. Kyle is a genius. And you will notice from test 1 to test 2, the quality of the video jumped about 90%. And it happened over the course of 4 hours. So people should check that out. We got a breaking story. Bill Barr has assigned an outside prosecutor, and I don't know what that means, to scrutinize the criminal case against former Trump NSA Michael Flynn. The review is highly unusual, more evidence of political interference by Barr into the work of career DOJ prosecutors. We'll talk about that when we get back in the fun half. We're going to be talking about it more in the future, but right now we're in a major, major crisis in terms of the Department of Justice. And fortunately, there does seem to be some activity by Democrats in the House Judicial Committee. They're going to be calling, supposedly, the 4 prosecutors who removed themselves, one of whom removed themselves completely from the DOJ, who were working on in fact, I think there were 2, because I think Lou did as well, who were working on the Roger Stone prosecution. We're watching Bill Barr clean it all up. He is the cleaner. You know, you come in and there's blood all over the apartment because you've just murdered somebody. He's the guy coming in, he's scrubbing it all out. We will talk about that in the fun half. And I will hop on YouTube over the break. But if you're a member and I do anything like that, I will post it on your members' video feed, which you can watch in the app at majorityapp.com. You can watch it. What was the app that you used that you could see it?
Pocket Casts. I have it.
Yeah, if you subscribe to your member feed on Pocket Cast, you can see the video there. I don't know how this is done. It's magic. Look at it. There it is. Well, yeah, no, I've seen it. That's me. Oh, yeah, he's going to show it right there. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was.
And you can speed up the video too, which is nice.
In Pocket Cast.
I don't usually like to watch Sam in real time.
Can you speed it up in the Majority Report app? All right, we're not going to spend our time on that right now.
Well, hearing you talk about technology, it's like labor for you. It seems like
I don't. That is not true. I'm a little bit of an AV geek, but it's not. That's not my.
It's indulgent.
You figured out how to shut off the Periscope all by yourself.
Oh yeah, that's the YouTube streaming. I know. I get a little bit of OK Boomer stuff on that. Folks, just a reminder, your support keeps this show going. You can become a member at jointhemajorityReport.com. When you do, you'll get those videos that I shoot over the week. You'll also get the free show, free of commercials, and you get the extra content every day. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. Check out the Noah McKee Show. It's on YouTube. She's doing it out of this studio, folks. And Patreon.com, the Noah McKee Show. We have a link to that in our podcast description. Emma, what do you want people to follow you on
Twitter?
On Twitter?
Yeah, and then also just youtube.com/rebelhq, facebook.com/rebelhq. It's the interesting name given to me for my
Rebel HQ.
Yeah, it's just Jenk's idea. People always think I'm with Rebel Media. I'm like, nope.
Good morning, Patriots.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Red Ice. Is that you doing a little bit?
Right. Well, when I go to Trump rallies and I tell them, it's actually great. They're way more willing to talk to me because they're confused. So sorry for capitalizing on your ignorance. That's where you guys can find me.
There you go. Also, check out the Michael Brooks Show at patreon.com/TMBS. And you can find the Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. Who was on last night or 2 nights ago?
Malika Jabali was in studio talking about. She did a sort of 7-minute short video piece on her story on the depressing of black turnout, I believe it was.
Oh, interesting.
And so, we had her in studio. It was a great conversation. We talked a lot about Bloomberg. So check that out, folks.
Jamie?
This week on the Antifada, I have a new episode of Vampire Castle going up today, wherein Leslie Lee III from Struggle Session And I, Jamie Peck of the Antifada, talk about actually existing vampires, folks. Now, we talk about the movie Blade and how it's a great metaphor for how, we just need a hero, a freedom fighter to kill all of the rich white vampires who are controlling the world. Also, coming out next week, I have an interview with the Socialist Rifle Association. I'm very excited about that. Also, if you're into weird alien stuff, check out our episode of Prolet Cult. It came out on Wednesday. It's free. Also, if you want to understand Marxist political economy, check out the Line Goes Down episode from the week before that. Patreon.com/theantifada.
That was very expertly done.
Matt.
Oh, thank you.
Literary Hangover did, with my co-host Alex, the history of Colonel Nathaniel Bacon's Rebellion by Ebenezer Cook. It's a 1728 play. We talk about Bacon's Rebellion, including George Washington's great-grandfather's role in that and how he killed peace diplomats, emissaries from the Native Americans. And
that's very nice.
He wanted land. And we also talk about how Nathaniel Bacon used the wives of loyalists, and he stood them upright so they could dig ditches and trenches behind them without being fired on by the governor's men. And then once they had the trenches dug, then the women could, get out of the way. But that's one of the things, like Thomas Jefferson liked to glamorize Bacon as this rebel against British tyranny, but that part is part they like to skip over.
Oh, obviously.
Use the wives as human shields.
I mean...
It's one thing to say, like, we want to murder all the Native Americans. It's another to say we're going to use your wives as human shields.
Right, right.
They were just fighting against that the oppression that's involved with behind every great man. They were like, we're going to put you in front of us.
Well, it worked.
There you go. All right, folks, see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck them. Almost says what?
What?
Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! price of blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy. Pussy.